it was very important to us to create a continuity, which is so much a part of what a park is. Parks need continuity, they need connectedness, they need a sense of cohesiveness in order to be successful. And the division of the Pier 1 landscape from the state park was a serious obstacle. Go ahead. So here you can get a sense. This is an aerial taken in October. Here's that lawn that looks out to the Statue of Liberty, and here's the lawn, the other lawn. This is a high point here that looks at the base of the bridge, and you can see the connectivity. And part of that is now that when you're standing over here, you actually can look over, and when you're standing on the hill, you can look back and understand. And it's tricky here because the park goes around a bend in the river. Next. So these are, of course, lost forever. These happen to be the demolition. Part of Pier 1 is on fill, and then a big piece of it was on pile structures. You can see this is these were used to go over the subway lines that are under this particular area. In fact, this is where the subway actually is. And so this piece is all gone now, and a lot of this is removed. This is a wetland salt marsh that is under construction. Next. And the revealing of that pile field, which has its own kind of spectacular homage to infrastructure. And the other thing that's very hard to do in the East River is to feel a register of the tide going up and down. I mean, so easy when you're at the beach because, you know, your blanket gets wet if you fall asleep. But in New York City, with the edges so built, it's actually hard to see the tide going up and down. And yet there's some, I think for me at least, and I'm sure for many, some profound connection to the processes of nature and the larger world that we're in by seeing that tide go up and down. And that's one of the things that we love about this, is that you get to see that. And of course, this has been engineered by our ecologists to a mean high tide. So the water comes up, and then the salt water comes into what will be our salt marsh in that area. That will be planted this spring. So for those that are nostalgic about how the entrance to Pier 1 used to look, I thought I would bring this image back. Things were so much better before we tore the structures down. And this is the entry to the park today. And the broad, there is all the way around all of the park pieces. They're not, every place you see this in these photos is where benches have subsequently been installed. But there's an extremely wide, about 25 feet wide or so, promenade around all the edges of the park. And then a new railing system, new lighting, of course. And then, you know, what will eventually be over 1,000 benches in the park when it's built out. So here we are on one of the hills that we created. The hills, the fill for creating the landform was recycled excavation material from one of the subway construction projects in the city, and a lot of the material for the construction of the park came down in barges down the river. And this gives you a sense of the kind of meandering long curves. There are very few straight lines in the park that we've made because, first of all, we've kept all the piers and they're all orthogonal. But the other thing is that for the design team, the linearity of the BQE and the majesty, but the straightness of the Brooklyn Bridge and the kind of geometry of Manhattan across the way needed to be complemented through contrast so that the park actually allows you to meander and stroll. And the other thing is that when you're walking on a curve, the path goes away from you and the landscape is in front of you. Whereas if you're walking on a straight path, you're basically always looking down the path, and it creates a very fast one-point perspective. Like if I were to step over here and look down the aisle, my eye just goes rushing down. It's all about the aisle. Whereas in a curving landscape where you do this, your eye is looking straight ahead, and it's the landscape that's in front of you. And that's part of the way that we let people feel that connection to the harbor and to that 800 acres rather than it being all about straight lines. Lots of trees, but planted in concentrated areas. These are trees that we came up with a palette of trees by studying other landscapes up and down the East River and planting things that we knew would do well. We've also planted all of the trees in soil that is lifted up, so if there's a hurricane and a 100-year storm or even the beginning of global warming, that all of the trees are up where, like we all know from, well, we didn't need Katrina to learn it in the Northeast, but when a hurricane comes, the water comes up and it puts salt water on land and it's damaging to trees. And so we put all the trees up high, and they're small and they're close together, but they create a rhythm of shaded areas and sunny areas, so you can walk through the shade, but not so much shade yet because the trees are little, but they're going to grow fast. And they're next to open lawns because the sun is also very welcome to people. Next. We've done a tremendous amount of recycling in making the park, and this is the granite stair that is made with the cladding of bridges in the city this was going to be thrown away, so this was free material, free in quotes of course, but it's not new granite that's been extricated from the ground, but granite that had another life in the city. And there's so many things that we've done in the park that set a new stage or a new kind of standard for recycling of material. Next. So we were on the top of those stairs looking towards one of the vales, and you can see some of the land forming that's going on. Next. This is our new railing system. There is just miles of this in the park, so we had to come up with something that was very frugal. We wanted it to look contemporary, but we wanted it to have a sensibility that also felt kind of nautical or industrial, but which also we felt needed to have a kind of an elegance that those two types of aesthetic system wouldn't normally have, because such an important part of the park is that people need to feel welcome to use it. So that the handrail, for example, is round at the top. It's very nice for leaning your stomach on, even if you don't have one as big as me. But that's very important. And then this other thing that is incredible is that we found out that the cold storage buildings had significant amounts of this rot-resistant, kind of amazing and nearly glossed wood from the south called longleaf yellow pine, and these are timbers of that. So rather than somebody said to me, gosh, they're taking such a long time to take those buildings down, what's going on? I said, well, actually, we're doing something that Americans almost don't know how to do anymore. We're actually taking that building down piece by piece, and we have a wood expert who's sorting out the different kinds of pine, and the one that's rot resistant and harder, the nails are being taken out. You can go to the next one. The nails are being pulled out in the next one, and they're being sawn next, and they're being turned into pieces of wood for the benches next, and then the benches in their final location. Thank you. You actually gave me goosebumps. I had so little to do with the design of this bench, though. This is really the genius of Gulliver Shepherd and some of the people that I mentioned, but I'm always there with opinions. But it is, I also would like to thank Regina for not giving up on this. Seriously, Regina. This was, it's comfortable too. It looks good and it's comfortable. But it would have been so easy to get a bench made of South American hardwood, and another acre of the rainforest would have been sacrificed for that. Seriously, as much as they talk about that stuff being renewable, I seriously have my doubts about it. So this is an amazing thing, and there have been other commitments like that, like all the fence posts. We have not used pressure treated wood, a source of some environmental concern. We've used regional harvested black locust. I grew up on a farm in upstate New York, and my father built every fence on our farm out of black locust. He put a post in the ground, it would last the rest of his life. So we're getting in touch with some things that have been done in the Northeast before and bringing them back in the park.